Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Higurashi When They Cry. This is Arc 4, Chapter 3, so let's get right into it, shall we? The phone suddenly rang. I woke up in a hurry. The clock read 9 p.m.
しまった。定時連絡の時間を寝過ごした。
I picked up the receiver.
赤坂様、外線からお電話が入っておりますが、おつなぎしてもよろしいでしょうか。ご同僚の加納様と申されております。
I knew it. I didn't call in, so they had phoned me.
すみません。つないでください。
かしこまりました。おつなぎしますので、一度受話器を置いてお待ちください。
After I had put down the receiver for a few seconds, the phone began to ring again.
はい、もしもし。赤坂です。
赤坂くん、加納です。お疲れ様。定時連絡がなかったので、こちらからかけました。そちらの状況はどう？
Leaving the lecture for later, my senior coworker got straight to the point.
今日はHinamizawa村へ実島に行きました。観光客を装うことで、村長以下の何人かの主同盟の要人との接触に成功。何も聞き出すには至りませんでしたが、好印象を得て、明日以降へのつなぎを作ることができました。
そう、なかなか手際がいいね。赤坂くんのどこか初々しい感じが、むしろ武器になったのかもしれないね。まずは上守備ってところかな。
比較するほど経験がないので、上守備かはわかりませんが、とりあえず今日のところは順調だと思います。
県警での情報や地元警察の公安での情報と照らしてどう？鬼ヶ淵死守同盟は白っぽい？
I still didn't know. I should have been able to say that immediately. I only had to say that, but for some reason, I hesitated.
まだ調査中ですので、なんとも。
そう、なるべく早めにね。分かってると思うけど、今夜が終われば、誘拐から丸4日が経過する。いつが時間切れという明白な区切りはないけど、時間の経過は確実に我々の状況を不利にしていく。それは分かってるよね。
ええ、分かっています。迅速に。だけれど、細心の注意で調査を続けます。
うん。くれぐれも気をつけてね。相手は暴力主義団体なんだから。油断すれば危険もあり得るからね。危険が迫ったらすぐに連絡を。その場合は地元公安に応援体制を入れられるようにするからね。
ありがとうございます。頑張ります。
他に赤坂くんの方から連絡はある？
I reported several bits of supplementary information, and at the very end, I decided to ask.
そちらの調査の進展はどうですか？
うん。こっちもみんな頑張ってるけど、なかなかはかどらないよ。何しろ、調べる団体が星の数だからね。だから、君の方の団体も白だと分かったらすぐに帰郷して、他の職員の応援に入ってもらいたいんだよ。室長は、鬼ヶ淵も洗っとけって言ってるけど、俺は鬼ヶ淵なんかの反ダム住民団体なんかは、今回の件、職員一人を一団体調べさせるためだけに出張させるのは、すごく痛いよ、ほんと。
At this point, he was just complaining. He was telling me to stop taking time enjoying my trip, to finish up and get back quick.
なるべく早めにケリをつけるようにします。
うん、よろしくね。じゃあ、他に何もなければ切るよ。
はい、特にありません。
As we were ending our call, he scolded me thoroughly for being late with my regular report. After that, I hung up the phone and sprawled out on the bed. Come to think of it, I hadn't heard anything from Oishi. He was supposed to contact me about a time and place to meet with the informant tonight. I thought about getting angry with Oishi in retaliation for being scolded for forgetting my daily report. Come to think of it though, Oishi didn't really say anything other than that he was going to call tonight. Waiting for a phone call when you didn't know what time it was going to come was in itself rather difficult. Just when I thought that, the phone rang. I picked up the receiver in a hurry.
もしもし。
これはびっくりしました。赤坂さん、あなた受話器取るの早いですね。 警官辞めても大企業の営業で十分飯が食えますよ。
まだ警官辞めた後のことなんか考えたこともありません。
そこまで過剰に反応されると面白いな。しかしいけないな。因果な商売ですし、今から考えても遅くないですよ。
遠慮いたしますので本題に入ってください。
そうですか。それは残念です。じゃあ老後の話は次の機会にでも。では本題に。
Many of the executives in the Onigafuchi Defense Alliance had a lot of sway in the neighboring regions. Even in Okinomiya, there were a lot of people with relations in the village. That's why meeting in the Shishibo Market District, far from Okinomiya, was a matter of course.
赤坂さん、こっちこっち。ちょっと迷いましたか。
Don't go chico me, man.
北口からの方が遠回りだけど道は分かりやすかったかもしれませんね。
いえ、遅れて申し訳ありませんでした。
夕飯はもう食べちゃいました？
ええ、済ませてあります。
じゃあお酒の飲めるお店に行きましょうか。洋酒派？日本酒派？女の子のいる店といない店はどっちがいいですかね。
お構いなく、勤務中は飲みませんので。
Hearing that, the man that Oishi had brought along bent backwards as he guffawed, clapping Oishi on the shoulder.
ねえ、初々しい人でしょ。その分ちょっぴりサービスしてあげてくださいよ。あのお金は全部彼のお財布から出てるんですからね。
The man that Oishi had brought seemed almost like a ticket scalper or a bookie. Even his appearance was dubious. The informant grinned deviously.
おい坊主、
Don't call me boy.
お前旦那にいくら渡した？だいぶ途中でつまみ食いされてんぞ。
大石氏への仲介手数料も含めていますから、それも含んだ上です。
It seemed that the informant had expected a more extravagant reaction on my part. When I responded matter-of-factly, he realized that I was an entirely different type of person than he was. But rather than putting a distance between us, it seemed that I had piqued his interest.
だから言ったでしょ。真面目な人なんです。でもね、赤坂さん、私たちのような職種の人間は豊富な社会経験がとても武器になるんですよ。
女の子がいてお酒が飲めるお店での経験がどう武器になるか疑問です。
The informant, unable to contain himself, clutched at his stomach as he guffawed, heedless of the people watching.
いや、もう赤坂さんはいちいち察しがいいな。よっ、さすが高学歴。
大石さん、あなたどこかで飲んできましたね。酔っ払ってます。
オフタイムに飲んで何が悪いんですか？あなたは勤務中でも私はオフ。
Can't argue with that.
オフ。
Oishi, who was the sort of that would fool around to begin with, was in such a good mood I couldn't figure out a way to deal with him. Completely different than me, who had come worried about getting every bit of information I could. Oishi-san, after taking so much money, you were supposed to get me information worth at least as much. I thought this, but then I realized that I was getting my information from the informant, so it didn't matter how drunk Oishi was. It was nothing I could complain about, but I still felt slightly riled up. Oishi and the informant, it was no doubt a fake name, but he introduced himself as Sato, led the way deeper and deeper into the back streets of the market district. Even though the market was bustling, a couple of turns off the main street and you were in a desolate alleyway. Oishi started climbing a set of stairs on the side of a seedy building. There wasn't any sort of signage, so I couldn't tell if the place was open or if it was even a store at all.
安心してください。怪しい店じゃありませんよ。
Those words coming from Oishi's mouth had absolutely zero credibility. Beyond the door was thankfully a typical mahjong parlor. I was relieved that it wasn't the sort of suspicious place I had to be on my guard about.
はい、いらっしゃい。あら、 大石さん、お久しぶり。こっち入ります？すぐ開きますよ。
いいえ。今日はセットですからいいです。お、待たせましたね。
Mahjong is a game played with 4 people. It seems that a middle-aged man who was going to be a fourth had already arrived and was waiting for us.
遅えぞクラウド。俺はもう帰ろうと思ってたんだから。
Oishi made an excuse for why we had taken so long. Eventually, realizing that I was a new face, the other man grew interested.
彼は赤坂さん。東京からはるばる出張されてきた将来有望な新人さんです。
坊主、
Stop calling me that.
お前麻雀はできんのか？
No.
まあ学生時代にそこそこに。
Still don't have a dub to my name, but that's beside the point. I played, alright? Sato and the old man cackled in unison. Their plot to sucker me out of my money was painfully obvious.
緊張続きの出張で疲れておいでだろうと思いましてね。一つ今夜は心の選択でもして差し上げましょうかと思いまして。
今更野暮なことを聞きますが、私たち警察官ですよ。
Relax, you can't use the P word so frivolously, bro.
まあそれはいい子なしで。なーに、10歳にはかけるわけじゃありませんよ。この後いいお店に遊びに行くときに誰が全員分を払うのか決めるだけですって。
遊びに行く？どんな店に遊びに行くんですか？
Without reservation, the 3 of them started suggesting places like cabarets, high-class clubs, and even brothels. At the very least, they were the type of places that you couldn't go to with money that was just for funsies.
私のお金は先日大石さんに根こそぎ預けて支払いは不可能ですし。
じゃあ坊主が勝てばいいじゃねえかよ。おめえが勝ったらこの雀荘の支払いはなしで、クラウドに仕事の話でも何でもすればいい。
No matter what happened, it seemed like they were intent on playing Mahjong for free. I would have to face in my resolve a bit. If I was going to be underestimated like this forever, it was going to get in the way of my work.
わかりました。では少しだけお付き合いします。私が勝ったらアフターの遊びは一切なしですぐに仕事の話に入ってもらいますからね。
いいですとも。
俺が勝ったらフラワーのブルーマーメイドに直行だからね。
Not the blue my maid.
おやっさんも好きだな。私はもちろん馴染みの店をはしごしまくりですよ。あけみちゃん。佐藤さんはどうします？
私は静かに飲めるお店でいいですよ。
静かにバニーさんとでしょ。この間飲みに行った時、あんたバニーさんの尻尾を引っこ抜いちゃったでしょ。あれ結局弁償だったの？
マスターに法政代とか言われて一本ドンペリ開けられたな。
What a lively table this was. I could tell the other customers were glaring at us while we loudly continued our crude conversation. Speaking of which, the fact that they assumed I was the same was a bit disheartening, to be honest with you. Oishi had taken all the money I had brought, so everything I had left was out of my own pocket. In addition, there wasn't that much left of that either. If I kept hanging around him like this, through his goading, my wallet would disappear into the night. I had to somehow win and return the conversation to my job. But these people, no matter how you looked at it, were pretty good. Sorry, Yuki.
そんじゃこれでリーチッと。
Well, the old man and Sato-san probably won't fall for this silly Riichi. I wonder if Akasaka-kun will spit out what I need.
クラウドのリーチなんざどうせこの辺だろ。この辺なら通るだろ。
God damn it. we're stuck in a club activity again.
それ
Aha! The old man's pretty good. He's quietly trying to use one of my safe tiles to complete his hand, isn't he? It seems that Akasaka-kun has at least learned the ropes when it comes to guarding against someone's Richi. But that will be his downfall.
どうした坊主
I told you, bitch!
サクッと切らねえかいよくわからなかったらクラウドと同じもんを切ってるや安全
Oh, Akasaka-kun's really fretting over this one. It was glaringly obvious that he had a safe tile to discard, but he didn't want to throw it away because it would move him farther from completing his hand. Because they're so nice when they're young and innocent, Nani? Come on, hurry up and throw out the kicker. If he gave me the winning tile, we would be headed to an establishment where I could do with all sorts of licking and sucking. What? Man, get me back into the thoughts of Akasaka-kun. Get me out of this Oishi-san's thoughts, bro. He nasty. If he gives the old man his winning tile, we would be headed straight to the place with maids and bloomers.
これは通りますか？
He looked up as he hesitantly threw out a tile that was... Oh, too bad.
おいおい危ねえパイだぞクラウド通るのか
いい通りますよ
It seems this time you were lucky. But as long as the round kept going, I could still win off the draw. But after that, Akasaka-kun managed to luckily avoid throwing any bad tiles, and somehow the round managed to end without anybody completing a hand.
天杯
連敗
Sato-san had keenly anticipated that two players were in Richi and had decided to play it safe. What a cool-headed way of playing. Now let's see, what kind of hand did Akasaka-kun have? When the round ends with nobody winning in Mahjong, anybody in Tenpai has to show their hand. But if you're not in Tenpai, then you have no obligation to reveal it. Your average beginner would normally show their hand even if they weren't in Tenpai to start a commotion about how if this tile or that tile came, they would be in Tenpai. But he didn't. Being stingy?
どうだった坊主ちょっと見せてみ
Sato-san reached over to flip the hand that Akasaka-kun had casually placed face down.
なんじゃこりゃ
It was nowhere near Tenpai. Was Akasaka-kun totally bad at this after all? Right then, as the old man compared the tiles from Akasaka-kun's hand to the discard pool, a puzzled expression crossed his face.
坊主おめえこの辺りで張っとるだろどうして切った
マンズの高いあたりが急に高騰しましたので抑えました。大石さんのリーチに対して安全性が高まったのにです。筋でさばけば無難なのにわざわざ抑えた方がいる。
おうクラウドのテンパイなど鼻から論外
相当高度な引っ掛けでなければ私の宝珠を期待したぬるめの手かと思って。それよりもダマで張ったあなたの方がとりあえずは問題でした。
いつテンパイしたのに気づいた
この辺りですか。ノンタイムで4連続で切ってますよね。初めは食い替えかと思いましたが私をチラチラ見ていたので期待しているんだと気づきました。
Akasaka-kun, you.
赤坂さんあんた麻雀始めてどのくらい
What first time?
高校から大学くらいまでの間しかやっていません。さあ続けましょう。佐藤さんはテンパイしなかったから流れて次は私ですね。おや
It seems like Akasaka-kun is really aware of how the game flows. We had thought we were just going to eat him alive, but it looks like that isn't going to be so easy.
大石さん想図が濃すいですね。回しますか。
この坊主クラウド降りるな
あと3ついい牌が来ればな佐藤さんはうまくいきそうです。
くそ食いたんで引きずり下ろすか C だ
C ですか。じゃあすみません。それポンです。
Whoa now. Going to call a 3 of a kind after he had declared a straight? Trying to override and interfere?
坊主おめえ離れしとるな
まさか 私が生まれる前から打ってるような方々とはそれです。ドン。トイトイ赤赤ドラさん。親ですからね。ちょっぴり高いですよ。
くわ
赤坂さんやるな。こりゃ我々も本気を出さないとねえ。
本気のついでに展望も出してもらいましょうかね。私は眠いんで手っ取り早く終わらせます。
Akasaka-kun, this is somehow unreal. Before I could realize it, there was an ominous cold air emitting from beneath Akasaka-kun's feet.
ぬるいですね。マンズのリャンウーパーが笑ってませんか？
ちくしょう坊主てめえクラウドお前差し込め坊主の親とっとと下ろすぞ。
悔しいですがどうやらそうした方が賢明なようですね。
出たローだ太陽ドラ1。
すみませんね。ロン、ピンフ。
頭っぱねだ小僧のくせに。
小僧が相手だと。じゃああんたその小僧以下ってわけですね。
Got him!
面白いな。あんたら連中は決まって小僧だ坊主だっていう
赤坂くんですよね。なんだかムードが変わりまくりなんですがね。
Oh, I didn't tell you guys? I'm actually schizo bitches.
私をかもって今晩はいいお酒を飲むおつもりだったんでしょうが、どうやら皆さんの当ては外れそうです。ロン、単品3色赤1ドラ1。
おお張ってやがったか。
だからあんたいくらダマだからってこんなにぬるい3年なんだから読んでくれなくっちゃ。
Akasaka-kun chuckled as he rested his chin in his hands. That pose was so fitting it was almost scary.
おいクラウド話がちげえぞ。初々しいカモがネギ背負ってきたって言ったのは誰だ。
いや誰でしょう。
おいさん、まずいよ。このままじゃ負けるよマジで。
Akasaka-kun, for you to make me get serious? It looks like you really wanna be milk dry.
ポンポン、暇絵がいいですね。もう一回ポンです。
Akasaka-kun was almost singing at this point. The tiles he had opened were all pin tiles. You can't be serious. Are you really going for the flush?
ポン。
坊主正気か。4つもさらしたらおめえパイが1つだけじゃねえかよ。
そうですね。知ってます？短期待ちって一番読まれにくいらしいですよ。
バカかてめえ。そこまで染めてさらしといて今さら出ると思うんじゃねえ。
読めてますよ赤坂さん。それ均一でも本一でもないんでしょう。4つポンした時点でトイトイは成立してますからね。あんた今絶好の単独トップ。こいつは均一と見せかけてトイトイで食おうという挑発手でしょう。
そう思うならピンズ切ってみます？大石さんの牌の左5つ、さっきから切り損ねてるピンズですよね。それを端から順に切ってみたらいいんじゃないですか？
You must be joking. Is he a mahjong god? If not, he had to be the main character of a manga or something. At that moment, the old man sent me a sign under the table. The message was simple and clear.
クラウドやれ叩き潰せ。
こんな若い子に様は好きじゃないんですがね。
あうここまで舐められて今さら弾けるか。
もう知りませんよ。ではどうぞ。
行くぞ坊主。リーチだ。オープンで行くぞ。ピンズの一数値待ちだ。
Most likely, the tile that Akasaka-kun was waiting for was one of those tiles. With this, Akasaka-kun was no longer capable of winning the hand. When I drew from the wall, I switched out the tile that Akasaka-kun would draw. The tile that I put in was the 1 pin. One of the tiles that the old man was waiting on. Akasaka-kun discarded a while ago, so there was no threat of it being the one he needed.
おい、坊主の番だぜ。
I knew he was troubled that the tile he drew was the 1 pin. Of course, he couldn't discard it.
坊主、分かってると思うが、オープンリーチに振り込んだら。
言われるまでもありませんよ。
The tile that came from Akasaka-kun's hands was an honor tile. Woo! Ain't that something? There's only one north wind tile left, isn't there? You were counting on a really rough wait, weren't you? But with this, Akasaka-kun's fate was decided.
カズ、命拾いしたな。だが、手配は1名だ。逃げきれなくなることもあるんじゃねえのか？
やっぱりそういうことか。
Akasaka-kun glared at the old man with a discerning eye. This guy had pretty good instincts. Did he figure out we were cheating?
やめましょうよ、やっさん。赤坂君の方が2、3枚は上手です。
バル、ここまで来てやめられるか。次行け、掴ませちまえ。
The next tile Akasaka-kun would draw was the 7 pin. With that, it would be settled. No matter which one he discarded, he would play it right into the old man's hand. An unavoidable full payout. When I drew my tile, I sneakily swapped Akasaka-san's... San? Crash, what? Akasaka-kun suddenly sneezed, collapsing the wall of tiles in front of him.
おいおい、何やってんだ。
すみません。ついくしゃみをした拍子に山を崩しちゃって。バップ払いですね。親だから4000オールですか？それともバップは積み棒に？
Unable to hold back, I guffawed. Akasaka-kun, knowing he was going to be cornered a second time and unable to escape, he took the drastic measure of knocking over his own wall.
やるな、坊主。100万払いをそういう手で防ぐとはな。
Earned some respect, huh?
大石さんもそんな見え見えの積み込みは勘弁してくだ。これが馬場なら今ので卓をひっくり返してたところですよ。
いえいえいえいえいえいえ、すみませんすみません。
Could at least say it like you mean it, bro.
あなたを侮っていましたよ。あなたどうしてお強いじゃないですか。
正直に話さんかい。若い頃はだいぶ慣らしたんだろ。
早稲田高田の馬場あたりでだいぶ遊ばせてもらいました。ちょっと勝ちまくりすぎて馴染みの店に出禁を食らいまして、今の家内にだいぶ怒られて足を洗ったんです。
勝ちまくりすぎて？あんた当時はどのくらいの勝率でやってたの？
メンツにもよりましたが、歌舞伎町あたりで打つときはほぼ負けなしでした。特に相手があれ系の人の時は命かかってましたからね。
20 times? What kind of stakes were those? Did you have a Yakuza at your table or some shit? Or pro baseball players?
なんだなんだ、クラウド。このタク、お前どっからこんなプロ雀士みたいなの引っ張ってきたんだ。もうやめだやめ。ああもう坊主、おめえの勝ちだ。
Best delivery so far.
降参降参。
ありがとうございます。光栄です。
いやいや、しかし赤坂さん、あんた打つと性格変わるね。
What can I say? I'm a competitive motherfucker.
なんで就職なんかしたの？あんたならフリーで十分に飯食っていけるじゃない。
プロ雀士には腕と月の両方が必要なんですよ。私には後者がありませんでしたから。
好きなんてその時の運不運だろ。あんたほどの腕があれば十分にいけると思うがな。
波の月じゃダメなんですよ。関したら3回に1回くらいはそのままカンドラが4つ乗ってここぞという時に狙ってリンシャンが引ける。そのくらいじゃないと。
赤坂君、 そんなのが頻繁にできたら、それはもう超能力者ですよ。
いえ、イカ様でも超能力でもなく、そのくらいの打ち手は結構いるんですよ。新宿で知り合った泣くたびにドラが乗りまくる雀士なんか鬼のように強かったですし、横浜で打ったプロなんかは当たり前のように一発で引き当ててましたからね。私にはああいう月がないんです。
What type of folks were those? They weren't named Ryu or Satoshi by any chance.
というわけで総合トップは私でよろしいですね。
へいへい、乾杯でございますよ。
Alright, cool, let's get down to the brass tacks then.
負けた負けた。久しぶりに大負けだ。
しかし打ってる時の坊主気合入ってたな。結構怖かったぜ。
よく言われます。自分ではそんなに目つき変えてるつもりはないんですがね。そんなに怖い目になってましたか？
The three of us nodded empathetically in agreement. So that was Akasaka-kun, the mahjong prodigy. Before he goes home from his assignment, maybe I could have him go play at a high-stakes table in my place. But it's not good to get greedy.
じゃあ仕方ないや。約束です。夜の学習会はこれでお開きにしましょう。申し訳ありませんね、おやっさん。今夜はこれでお開きです。
しゃあねえな。消えて寝るわ。体力つけんと体が持たん。
お仕事が大変なんですか？
ああ、おやっさんはHinamizawaダムの第一工区の監督さんなんです。
NANI?!
住民とは連日小競り合いをしてますからね。しんどい商売ですよ。
来年あたり第二工区も任されちまうかもしれねえな。黒田さん、血圧上がりまくりって聞いたしよ。身が持たねえよ。
おやっさんなら大丈夫でしょう。あなた、見た目よりも面の皮厚めですしね。
俺だって仏じゃねえからな。腹渡にくり返る時あるぞ。特に園崎のあの小娘は我慢がならん。あいつの顔面いつか簡単には治らんくらいに歪ま。
まあ。でも給料はいいんでしょ？かなり破格の給金だって聞きましたよ。
おっとりめえだ。あんなに世知がれえ職場で給料が安かったら誰も残らんよ。あ、クラウド。警察はいつになったら村の人間全部国から立ち退き命令とか出てるんだろ？
ねえ、どうなってるんでしょうね。
The old man, who identified himself as the foreman of the Hinamizawa Dam, spewed a few complaints until he felt better about it, and then left quietly.
じゃ、行きましょう。あとは佐藤さんに任せますかね。
大石さんは帰られるんですか？
私が一緒でもお邪魔しちゃうだけでしょ。それに佐藤さんの仕事を買ったのはあなたです。私は対価を払ってませんからね。
Oishi-san was kind of sketchy, but he was strangely conscientious about some things. I felt quite a bit of a gap between myself and Oishi's generation from that part of him that I did not comprehend.
じゃあ坊主、いや雀士様にもう坊主なんて言えねえな。赤坂くんでよかったっけ？
Sai,
はい。
じゃあ赤坂くん
make that san, Akasaka-san.
行こうか。
では赤坂さん、また何か困ったことがあったらいつでも頼りに来てくださいね。
大石さんにお支払いできるような対価はもう持ってませんよ。
んじゃ、今度の勝負で少し手加減してもらえたらチャラにしますよ。
Oishi, seemingly still not having had his fill of playing around, but without overstaying his welcome, disappeared into the night. The informant named Sato-san had me get into his car before he set off. He favored narrow roads and made numerous short left turns.
左折法による尾行確認ですか？
詳しいな。
Checking to see if you were being tailed by making left turns was a rather classic technique. If it was just a single pursuer, you could confirm it that way. But if you're being tailed as a team, this archaic method wouldn't let you shake them. Of course, doing it anyway was better than not doing it at all.
赤坂君が何者かは旦那から何も聞いてないんだが、やっぱり警察関係かい？尾行確認に詳しいなんて、あとは探偵者くらいしか思いつかねえね。
言わなければならないものでないなら拒否したい質問ですね。
やれやれ。麻雀やってからすっかり雰囲気が大人びちまったな。会った時のあのおどおどしたあんたはどこ行っちゃったんだよ。
I smiled wryly. Looking back now, I had to be a little grateful for being made to play mahjong. Thanks to that, I was able to relieve some tension. Eventually, Sato-san, confirming that there were no cars following us, slipped outside the city. We were on a pitch-black country road, unable to see anything besides the light outside. The only things I was able to hear were the hum of the car's air conditioning and the chirping of insects and frogs.
旦那からHinamizawa村については多少のことは聞いてんだろ？
御三家という旧家による支配や、現在は園崎家が一党独裁をしているとか。
そこまで知ってるならくだらない前置きは省略していいな。
では犬飼大臣の孫の誘拐に鬼ヶ淵死守同盟が関与しているか否かを。
Sato-san checked the rearview mirror one more time to confirm there wasn't anybody behind us before speaking.
昨夜園崎本家で親族会議が開かれたそうだ。親族会議ってのは旦那から聞いてるか？
いえ。
普通に親族会議って言ったらまあ親戚が集まってお茶でも飲むようなもんだよな。だが園崎本家の親族会議っていうのはそんなのんびりしたものとはわけが違う。
A family council held by the Sonozaki main house. That would be a meeting between those who truly controlled Hinamizawa village. They wouldn't be talking about private family matters. It would be about the village as a whole. About organizing activities against the dam project, among other things. Everything would be decided there. In reality, they were deciding the fate of the village. At the head of the meeting was Oryo Sonozaki. More or less called the Empress Sonozaki. As the ultimate decision maker of the clan, she was to be feared and respected. Infirm with old age, she was often unable to stand on her own, but her words carried enough weight to sway the fate of the village. It seemed that lately she had grown weak, and on days where she wasn't feeling well, remained bedridden. Family councils that occurred while she wasn't feeling well took place with her on the floor. In the middle of a dignified Japanese-style room, still in a futon, only the upper half of her body sitting upright, a stern look on her face. That was Oryo Sonozaki. Sitting next to her was her heir, Mion Sonozaki. She was still young. Nah, young wasn't quite the right word. She was a girl who remained childish. Her role was to merely sit beside Oryo Sonozaki, sometimes responding to her requests. However, she was the only one deemed worthy to succeed Oryo. She had the same hawkish eyes, enough to give pause to anybody who so much as looked at them. Much was expected of her in the future, this granddaughter of the Sonozaki's leader. And also on either side of her sat several other important members of the remaining three families, the Kimiyoshi family and the Furude family. First on the list for the Kimiyoshi family was of course the mayor of Hinamizawa village, Kiichiro Kimiyoshi. And lined up beside him were several more of his direct relatives. Opposite to them sat the other of the three families, the Furude family. The Furude family was only comprised of the family of a Shinto priest, so the only ones sitting there were said priest, his wife, and their daughter Rika. Rika was doted on by many of the older folks in the village, and it seemed that Oryo was no exception. While the stress from just attending family council was said to be enough to shorten your lifespan by 3 days, it seemed like Rika was the only one exempt from that. No matter how charged the atmosphere was around her, she paid it no mind, instead humming along as she doodled in a sketchbook. In fact, the night before, lying on her stomach while humming and doodling, she nonchalantly tucked her legs into Orio's futon like it was a kotatsu. All this was the 3 families. And all around the room, lined row upon row, were relatives of the Sonozaki family. The only ones who were afforded cushions to sit on were direct relatives. The others were left to sit in the seiza position directly on the tatami mats. With Empress Sonozaki enshrined at their center, they were almost like a giant snake coiled around the room. It was decided that everybody would sit in order of their rank. The number of people from the Sonozaki family was overwhelming. The fact that the Sonozaki family held so many seats at a meeting where everything pertaining to the village was decided made determining where the balance of power was held in the 3 families as clear as day. The number of members in attendance from each of the families directly reflected how much influence they had in ruling Hinamizawa.
その会議で何が話されたんですか？
Sato-san, after remaining silent for a while, quietly began to speak.
マスコミ関係に支払ってる謝礼金の額が大きいんじゃないかい？
Breaking the long moment of silence was the head of the Kimiyoshi family, Kichiro Kimiyoshi. The Onigafuchi Defense Alliance wasn't a business. They were nothing more than a private organization pushing for the cancellation of the Hinamizawa Dam project with no reliable source of income. Fundraising had always been a problem. When they first started operating, they had managed to collect a sizable amount of funds through donations. But as the conflict dragged on, that amount was steadily declining.
石を投げるだけが全ての時代じゃないさ。マスコミの力も侮れないのは重々承知しているし、今後もその力を借りたいのは同じさ。
The expressions of the people related to the Sonozaki family were sullen. As the one who suggested they should borrow that power was the family head, Orio Sonozaki. The battle wasn't just about force of arms. In this civilized age, there were civilized methods of fighting. Orio suggested that creating a strategy incorporating the mass media. Orio's foresight was spot on, and the effects of that plan, while at first unclear, slowly began to manifest. If the physical confrontation at the construction site was meant to delay the progress on the dam site by even 1 day, then the propaganda war using the media was aimed at attacking the dam project itself. At first, there were those who had doubts about that strategy, but there was nobody now who called those results into question. But in order to maintain those media ties, a colossal amount of money was required. As long as the amount of funds they had was abundant, things would turn out alright. It couldn't be argued that it was a massive expense, but the results spoke for themselves. But with the conflict continuing to drag on, the circumstances had changed. The head of the Sonozaki family, no, the one who sat at the pinnacle of the Hinamizawa 3 families, Orio, had suggested the idea herself, so it was already untouchable and continued to be allowed to drain from the budget. Nobody acknowledged that it should be so allowed, but nobody could say anything. That was the price of dealing with the mass media.
どうも、お嬢さん。
The only person who could object to a plan proposed by the head of the Sonozaki household herself was probably Mayor Kimiyoshi. Orio, with a hard-to-define expression on her face, as if she had severed herself from the fetters of mortal emotion, simply listened quietly to Kimiyoshi's words. But really, it was hard to tell if she was quietly listening or didn't even have the intention of listening at all.
去年機関士の値上げの理解を得るのにも随分苦労したじゃない。一度だけってことで理解を得て、また今年もってわけにはいかないよ。ねえ、古手さん。
The mayor looked to the priest and his wife from the foot of the family for affirmation. The priest gave a vague expression, avoiding a prompt response. But his wife gave her answer without a second thought.
そうですね。機関士代は特に貧しい家には大きな負担になっています。みんな自分たちの村のためだからと耐えていますが、これ以上の値上げはやめた方がいいでしょうね。
The bulletin was, as its name implied, a bulletin published by the Onigafuchi Defense Alliance. It outlined the alliance's activities, ideals, and resolve, but you couldn't deny the contents were rather piecemeal. That bulletin's main goal wasn't to inform people, but rather was something to sell to businesses and people living in the village or connected to it, and using those sales to collect funds. In other words, it had become something of a tax. Of course, it didn't have to be said that this was one of the main sources of income for the Onigafuchi Defense Alliance. Originally, purchase was supposed to be voluntary, but in Hinamizawa, it had silently become the opposite. In the neighboring towns as well, it seemed that many businesses were buying copies just to avoid butting heads with the alliance. The priest whispered to his wife to not say anything unnecessary, but was struck down decidedly with a cold glare. Cowering from that glare, the priest shut his mouth. The priest's wife always held the power in their relationship. That was because she was the one who carried the Furida bloodline. The priest merely married into the family. He was nothing more than somebody who adopted the name just to join the three families. He should have been able to find a spot fairly high up in the hierarchy of things, but the lack of authority in his voice meant that he had still not gained any favor. Casting a backwards glance at her rather disparate parents, Rika continued to doodle whimsically without paying them any mind. Signaled by a look from Oryo, Mion brought her ear closer to her grandmother. There, something was said to her in a quiet voice. After responding with a couple of questions with a nod from Oryo, Mion looked around the room and conveyed her grandmother's words.
機関士の値上げもやむを得ません。
Kimiyoshi made a face like he had just bit into something unpleasant, but that expression quickly disappeared like it had never happened at all.
だけどミオンちゃん、君だって分かってると思うけど、機関士の負担は決して軽いものじゃない。南沢のすべての人間にかかる重みなんだ。あんまり負担をかけすぎれば内部から崩れることだって。
内部から崩れるのは誰ですか？
どれって別にそういう意味じゃ。
最初に崩れるのは誰かと聞いています。
Being cross-examined by a girl who still had fragments of childishness remaining within her, the words stuck in Kimiyoshi's throat as he sunk into silence. Mion repeated her question once more, looking around the crowded room. Everybody refrained from making eye contact to avoid being pierced by her gaze. The words she had spoken were unarguably said in proxy for Oryo. That's why when Mion spoke them, they carried the same weight. But the look in her eyes were different. Like Orio's, they had a hawkish gaze, strong enough that anybody looking upon them would freeze in their tracks and yield. But that gaze was without question one that belonged to Mion herself. As Mion would eventually inherit everything from Oryo, the day when she would stand up as a young and capable leader in her own right would come. Nobody wanted to believe otherwise for even a minute. That's why nobody even thought of Mion as just some sort of little kid.
君吉さん、機関士の値上げごときでは誰の決意も崩れませんよ。
Kimiyoshi, while grumbling a little bit, made a gesture as if to say he had no objection.
マスコミ関係への出費は継続とします。その出費がさらに圧迫となるようなら、機関士の値上げもやむを得ない。
Mion had rendered her judgment. Everybody bowed their heads, silently listening to her words.
園崎家当主代行、園崎美音です。我が名において以上決定し、異議はこれを認めず、抵抗ある場合は実力をもって排除します。
The The formal decree was read aloud, indicating her judgment. There would be no retrial, but there was a certain authority behind those words that even a courthouse couldn't compare to. If she was a judge, she would have banged her gavel, signaling that the matter was settled. Mion pulled out a large bell from inside her clothes and rang it. Everybody present could only prostrate themselves before the harsh sound of the bell.
なんとも大時代的な親族会議ですね。
あんたみたいな若いもんにはちょっと信じられないだろうけどね。こういう古い土地にはこんなのが未だ根強く残ってるもんさ。
It was exactly as Oishi had said. The old system of the three families had vanished, and now the Sonozaki family was running things by themselves. On top of that, their rule was borderline despotic.
会議はそれで終わりですか？
Was that the end of the meeting?
いや、まだ続く。先を続けるよ。
Ah, fuck, here we go again. Eventually, after the ringing of the bell ceased, there was a deafening silence. Within all of that, a lone man shuffled closer to Mion and whispered something in her ear. Mion asked several questions quietly in response. When she was satisfied, she motioned for the man to leave. The man who talked to Mion was a member of a gang that her father was the leader of. The organization that had the entire area of Shishibone City under its control, so it was quite well known even here. Of course, this was talking about the criminal underworld, so it's not like just anybody would know. But just showing a patch with the gang symbol on it was enough to resolve any disputes in the neighborhood. Mion's biological father, to Oryo, was her daughter's husband. The power of that man's gang was the driving force that controlled the dark underbelly of the Onigafuchi Defense Alliance. And so that man, from his position as the next in line to control the three families, continued to coerce everybody around him with his unconventional presence. Mion exchanged a look with her father. Was it okay for her to tell what she just heard directly from Oryo? It looked like she was asking him that question. Her father gently but firmly nodded his response. Mion also nodded, and then sidled up to Oryo and informed her of something. Eventually, Mion finished conveying her message, separated herself from Oryo, and fixed her posture, waiting for Oryo to signal her response. It wasn't often that Oryo showed any emotion. That's why, when she started to laugh quietly, a vague sense of uneasiness crept over everybody in the room.
そら、難儀なこともあったものよの。
Oryo was laughing so happily that Kimiyoshi had to hesitantly ask,
どうしたんだい、お嬢さん。
我らにとって土地が母なら、この度のダムの騒ぎは母の命を脅かされる騒ぎっちゅうことだろうな。
Yes, I guess you could see it like that. Kimiyoshi, unable to comprehend the meaning of her words, looked confused. Oryu, with a wide grin on her face, turned towards everybody and addressed them in a clarion voice.
ダムの親玉の大臣がの、孫さらわれちまって、右往左往しとるっちゅう話だ。こんれでおあいこだの。
バカな。
Information on the kidnapping of Minister Inukai's grandson shouldn't have leaked from anywhere. How did they know? Even we didn't know that much about the kidnapping incident. Exactly how did an antiquated household so far away from Tokyo come to know of it? It was a tranquil place, but I couldn't help but have an uneasy feeling about Hinamizawa village. At some point, I had mentally filed this place away as an unrelated to the incident at hand. That mental paperwork had just blown away in the wind.
どうして鬼ヶ淵獅子同盟が知っているんだ。
Sato-san, unable to come up with an answer, fell into silence.
すみません。続きをお願いします。
なあ。
Bruh.
犬飼建設大臣のお孫さんがさらわれた。お嬢さん、それは本当かい？
That major of an incident was nowhere to be seen in the newspapers or on TV. But in Hinamizawa, there was nothing strange about Oryo knowing something that the rest of the world did not.
我らの痛みは母を失う痛みじゃの。それに値するとは思わんが、孫を失う痛み。
Damn, that's cold.
少しは答えるといいんだがの。なあ。
That last question wasn't addressed to anybody in particular. It was as if she was looking for consensus.
だが、土地と人様の子供ではわけが違うの。隠すのは構わんが、怪我だけはさせたくないものだな。こにゃ何の罪もねえ。大事にしたれな。
それはつまり鬼ヶ淵死守同盟が誘拐事件に関与しているということ。
Excellent deduction there, brother.
必ずしもそうとは言えねえな。
どうして当主であるお涼がこれほどまではっきりと誘拐した孫の処遇について指示を出しているのに。
兄さん、これはね、園崎家のいつものことなんだよ。
いつものこと？それはどういう意味です？
Let's say there was a particular problem, okay? One that wasn't exactly favorable for the Sonozaki family. If Oryo shows concern over that particular problem, hearing that, somebody who attended the family council would be helpful. As a result, Oryo's wish would be granted. However, neither Oryo or anybody else would know who actually did it. With this kind of clever little ploy, the Sonozaki family was able to manipulate events even though they had their hands laid out on the table.
では親族会議に出席していた誰かが犯人ということですか？
あるいはそもそも犯人なんかいない可能性だってあるよな。
Elaborate.
俺自身、その万座の一同の中に誘拐犯がいるって確信を持ってるわけじゃない。ただ自分の意見を述べただけさ。
It was an odd and unpleasantly secretive way of doing things. Were they involved or were they not? I couldn't see beyond the veil. This much, however, I could say with certainty. This kidnapping was an ironclad secret. No matter how high a position somebody was in, even they wouldn't know about it. If there was somebody who would know about it, they would be connected to the public safety. In other words, one of us. The only other options were people connected to the case itself. Including the minister, there would be people affected by the incident, or the people that committed it. In any case, there was no way an old household in a place removed from Tokyo by over 6 hours of highway travel should know about it. Them knowing at all was already strange. My suspicions began to accumulate, like falling snow.
孫の誘拐についてお涼が述べたのはここまでだ。あんたの知りたかったことが含まれてりゃいいんだがな。あとは兄ちゃんの仕事だな。何のお仕事やってるか知らんけど、園崎家を相手にするなら相当の覚悟でやっとけよ。大石の旦那は怖いもの知らずだけどな。最近は来てないけど、一時はオフの時も防塵ベストを着込んでたんだよな。
ええ、忠告ありがとうございます。
標準語が流暢だよな。
Thanks.
兄さんは東京とかの人？
え？それが何か？
Investigators were always close to danger. It was best not to divulge any information on myself.
兄さんのお仕事だけどさ、ひょっとして警視庁の公安部の人ってことある？
I couldn't remain silent here. It would be the same thing as admitting it.
え？まさか。
こっから旦那からもらった金の範囲には入らないんだが。
It's time to get out of the car.
兄さんとは今日宅を囲んだ仲間だからな。サービスってことで話してやるよ。お涼から誘拐の話が出た後、もう一つ話題が出たんだ。
It was regarding us. Another topic that Oryo brought up. And right before he told me this, Sato-san asked if I was from the Metropolitan Public Safety Division? In other words, what those two things meant caused a chill to run up my spine. Yep.
そんででな、大臣の孫さらったのは調べるために東京からはるばる公安の捜査官が派遣されてくるっちゅう話だ。
公安の捜査官。
大臣の孫の誘拐な、うかつにゃ大ごとにできゃんってことで、警視庁の公安部が独自で調べとるっちゅう話だ。はっ、大行なこったの。どうした？
Rika, who had been drawing the entire time and was completely uninterested in the conversations up until now, looked at Oreo with an interested face as soon as the topic of the public safety came up.
警視庁が来たのですか？
リカちゃまは警視庁も知ってなさるんかい。偉いの。
誰が来たのですか？
公安のどんなやつが来よったんか。誰ぞわかるやつはおらんかいな。
Mion's father raised his hand slightly.
新米の若造が一人と聞き及んでおります。
What kind of way of phrasing it is that?
新米？ほかほかなのですか？
What?
んええ、はい。新米とか。
Mion's father smiled wryly as he answered Rika's question.
ほかほかのふかふか？
Fam,
ええ。
ほかほかのふかふか？
the fuck's going on here? Rika smiled with interest. Why did Rika suddenly act interested only when it came to this topic? That was a question that apparently nobody had the answer to.
リカちゃまはその男のこと何か知っているのかな？
知んないのですよ。
After her rather flat reply, Rika buried herself under Oreo's futon again. But when she buried herself there, Rika no longer started drawing again. Instead, she was making an expression like she was deep in contemplation.
どうしますか、お母さん。
Mion's father posed a question. He had the type of uncouth expression on his face indicating that, when given the order, he could snuff the problem out at any given time.
はるばるHinamizawaまで来よった。しばらくはのんびりさせてやるのもよかろう。
We gotta get the fuck out of here.
泳がせろということでしょうか。
Mion's father asked in response. Oreo smiled thinly as she responded.
ほっといたれな。が、あんまりおいたが過ぎるようやった。そん時は遠慮せんとな。なめられるのはすっきゃせんね。
なんて話があったそうだ。まさかあんた、その警視庁の新米じゃないよな。
Nope.
まさか。
The sensation of cold bristling fear began to crawl its way up my back. This family council took place last night. In other words, yesterday. Then today, when I was dressed up as a tourist headed towards Hinamizawa, my cover was already blown? When I remember the first person I met when I got up to the bus stop, I couldn't breathe. The person at the family council who expressed interest in the man being dispatched from the Metropolitan Police, Rika Furude. And then, the person who was waiting for me the whole time in her bus shelter, Rika Furude. It was an unthinkable image. No, it was a delusion. When we met at that bus shelter, did Rika-chan already know my true identity? Did she know that I was Akasaka, dispatched from the Metropolitan Police Department, and come to meet me? Then, including Mayor Kimiyoshi, every villager that I met, everybody knew, but just pretended not to? Because Oreo had given instructions not to interfere? Thinking about it logically, it didn't seem possible. I met quite a number of people. If there is people that are good at acting, then there is people who are bad at hiding things. If there was that many people, then there should have been somebody among them who knew I was from public safety and couldn't hide their hostility. However, I didn't feel any presence like that. But then, even still, why did Oreo tell them to leave me alone? Was it because if they were careless about it, it could only raise more suspicion? Well, here's the thing. So the Public Safety Division sent us here specifically, right? So they know we're an agent on a mission. If I were to somehow go missing, that would most certainly raise suspicion, and they would have more eyes on the village investigating what happened to me, and somebody would take over the initial mission, right? Or was it because they believed a rookie like me wouldn't be able to find anything? Akasaka is a coward. I recall that strange voice which could only make me believe that Rika-chan had been possessed. That unknown entity, no matter how you looked at it, knew my true identity from the get-go. That's that thumbnail action though. And then, how did it warn me again? That's right. It warned me to hurry up and go back to Tokyo. Instead of the realistic worry that the Onigafuchi Defense Alliance has discovered my identity, the absurd worry brought on by the unknown girl stuck with me more. What exactly was that girl? What was the thing I would eventually regret? That mysterious girl, Rika Furude. Let's stop this. Everything I was thinking of right now was merely conjecture. Tomorrow, first thing in the morning, I will report everything I heard right now to HQ and await further orders. There was no mistaking that the possibility the Onigafuchi Defense Alliance were related to this case was there, and the fact that my cover was blown meant that I was in a very precarious position. But as everybody at HQ was already extremely busy, they might not be able to spare the support.
もういいかい？よければ好きなところまで送るよ。
Yeah, Tokyo, please.
ではお会いした元の駅までお願いします。
A rural road where even a streetlight was rare. I couldn't see anything. I wasn't aware of anything but the asphalt that was lit up by the headlights. Outside of that light, was it simply darkness? Or was there something lurking there, like waiting to strike? I had to think I drew the short straw here. I wanted to go back to Tokyo. For some reason, the voice of the girl warning me to go back to Tokyo still lingered in my head.
Hmm. 昨日銀座の料亭でお会いしてね。そういう話が出たんだよ。
別室の謁見でしょう。連中、公安に干渉しすぎですよ。あまり迎合すると悪い洗礼を残しますね。
犬飼大臣は公安の動きに不快感をあらわにしているらしい。多分月曜の町議で次官からその旨の話が出るんじゃないかと思う。参ったな。
次官へは局長級に話つけてもらうしかないですよ。給料を多くもらってる人の当然の仕事ってことで。
まあそうなると局長からは絶対に大臣脅迫の物証を求められるよな。
あの人たまにどっちの味方か分かんなくなりますね。うちらの味方しなくてどうすんのっての。
まあ多分大臣を経由しての圧力だと思ってるけどね。俺が時間室で油汗かいて時間稼ぐ間に調査進めてもらうしかないよな。全身の汗絞られて絞りかすになっちゃうかもしれないけどな。でどうなの？調査の進行は。
期待してた濃厚なラインがことごとく外れて正直途方に暮れてます。
最近の大臣発言をまとめるとHinamizawaダムの計画の話が目立つっていう報告を聞いたけど、それ
目立つっていうか本当に微細な程度の違和感ですね。たまたま県議連でのスピーチだったから時事ネタを話しただけかもしれないし。
確か地元団体が過激に抵抗してるってやつだっけ？鬼ヶ淵死守同盟。確か赤坂君に調べてもらってたよね。
僕は連中には今回の事件は起こせないと踏んでいます。ですが、疑わしいところのほとんどが真っ白な以上、疑いの枠から外すわけにはいかないかも。赤坂君からはその可能性は否定できないとの軽い報告は受けています。
なら調べてみる価値はあるんじゃないの？しらみつぶしなんだから、残る疑わしい団体がそこ一つならやるしかないでしょ。
ま、調べる団体はそこだけじゃないんですがね。鬼ヶ淵と同じ程度のレベルで疑わしい団体になると、もう人手も時間も残業代も全然足りません。
赤坂君からさ、もうちょっと詳しく聞いてみてよ。俺はちょっと要注意に感じるけどな。
彼、村人とうまく接触できたって連絡してきました。現地の警察とも連携できてるみたいですね。
赤坂君との連絡密にしてください。それで彼からの情報が引っかかるようであれば、増援を送ることもありということで。
わかりま…すいません、片岡市長。局長からお電話です。こっちに回しますか？
ああ、いい、そっち行きます。もしもし。
What's in the box? Do you believe that there are choices in life? There are many people who lament the following. If there only existed points in life where there were clear choices to make, we would be able to scrutinize those carefully and make decisions based on what would lead to a better future for us, right? Every time I hear people lament as such, I cast it off as a rather trivial worry. Even if you were given a clear choice, it wouldn't be meaningful at all, and there wouldn't be any such path to a better future. Is this hard to understand? Then, let's pretend that in front of you there are two strange boxes. In other words, you have two clear choices. Do you open the red box or the blue box? A lot of things would be uncertain even with that choice, wouldn't they? If you don't have the option of opening neither, then your choice boils down to the natural impulse of opening the box that holds the better result for you. Then, after examining the shape and features of each, and pondering a great many things, you have to pick either the red or the blue. If this was you, which box would you open? Red or blue? If you were to go by the traditional meanings, then red would be a dangerous, threatening color. I would go with blue for the record. However, that's assuming that they are identical in shape or whatever. However, that doesn't automatically mean that it would be calm and relaxing inside the blue box either. In fact, it might even be that the colors are a trap, making you wary of the red box and have you open the blue. A trap? Could it be that the contents of the box aren't a reward, but rather a penalty? See, now you're at a loss. You're so conflicted over the choice between red and blue that you just started wishing there was an option to open neither and just fucking leave. But there isn't! You have to open either the red box or the blue box. Oh, and I forgot to say this, but if you choose one box, the other will disappear. So you will never know the contents of the box you did not open. I'll just put that rule at the end there for you. Now, why did you fucking choose? The red box or the blue box? It's alright. You won't lose anything by picking either one. Come on now. Oh, what the fuck? I'm gonna go with the blue box. Have you thought about it? In the end, you chose this color, didn't you? As soon as you chose, the other box disappeared. So you can give up on the contents of that one, okay? That's the rule. Now, open up the fucking box you chose. Inside the box there was a stick of chewing gum. I know, you were a little disappointed. Well, that's only natural. Can I go back? Can I go back? No. I should have saved. Fuck it. 2 tears in the bucket. I could just replay through this, you know? No matter how you look at it, it looks like you drew the dud. The correct box might have had a bar of chocolate in it for all you know. No, in fact, something incredible like a pair of tickets to Hawaii might have been in there. But even if you wanted to verify that, that other box has already disappeared, bro. There is no way you can check now. But if you think about it from an optimistic point of view, then just maybe the other box was empty and this box was the winner. And being satisfied, or perhaps not, with such a cheap prize, you pop it into your mouth and start chewing it happily. So what do you think in the end? If you were given a second chance, would you try to open the other box? But unfortunately, the chance to choose between the red box or the blue box has come and gone, never to be fucking seen again, okay? The chance to change your selection will never come. That ship has sailed. Don't your parents often say, every choice you make in life only happens once, so choose carefully? No. See? Choices aren't that great after all. Aren't you a little disillusioned now? Mion, was that you? Okay, so here's what we're gonna do. Dive back in there. And can I like skip to the selection? Wait, are you gonna... Ah! Ah! Wait, don't skip, don't skip, don't skip, do not skip. Yes, yes I did. What you got for me? A piece of caramel? This was the winner. The game knew! Oh no, you keeping track of me, boy? You might have thought you made the wrong choice before, but now, seeing them together like this, you can't really say that either choice was the wrong one. Well, I guess everybody has their own personal preferences. If you prefer caramel to gum, for example, but bro, if I ate like a kebab wrap, right, with garlic sauce, I'll take the gum, you know what I'm saying? You're definitely thinking of choosing to open the box again based on that preference. The clear choices you wanted were basically this. The selfish desire to open up both boxes and compare the contents and then pick the one that most suited you. But you see, reality is the same as this game. If you pick one, the one you didn't choose disappears. So there's no way you could check the result. If at that time, if you had done this, or perhaps if you had done that, or perhaps if you had done that, then it wouldn't be so hard to imagine that you could be happier, or perhaps less happy than what you are right now. In the end, you only have the pleasure of approving of or being disappointed by the choice that you did make, alright? But that's fine. After all, didn't you enjoy the thrill of making the choice? If, like now, you knew the contents of both boxes, then the choice between the red box or the blue box would just be a waste of time. Because instead of this boring game about boxes, you could be looking at the quickly changing evening summer sky, listening for the distant sound of thunder, and pondering if it's going to rain or not. That would be much more fun, wouldn't it?
Eh, はい。それで、お通夜が明日の午後6時からになりまして、告別式があさってのお昼。会場は沖宮セレモニーホールになります。
すっか。池澤助役のお孫さんの葬式じゃ、何にも挨拶なしってわけにもいかんね。みよ、代わりに出てえな。
うん、了解。喪服で行く？香典はいくらくらい？
学校の服でえんね。前のボタンちゃんと留めてくんねよ。香典は5万。10万包んだれな。世話になったかんな。
Mion quietly whistled in awe at the exorbitant amount of money her grandmother was offering.
池澤さんはな、沖宮の事務所長だった頃からしっかりした人だったんで、役人は挨拶って言ってもでもな、池澤さんはわしがお茶を勧めるといっつも上がってくれて、ちゃんと話を聞いてくれた。人の話を最後まで聞く、本当に鏡みたいな人だったんね。
The two guests made a show of nodding, making it clear they were paying attention as Audio reminisced. The sight of them trying not to get on Orio's bad side was humorous enough to elicit laughter from Mion occasionally.
で、池澤助役のお孫さんはいくつで亡くなったんねん。
11歳だそうで。
Orio closed her eyes and shook her head lightly, lamenting the loss of such a young life.
確か、孫は一人だ言うてんな。親より先に死ぬほどの親不孝あるめな。
ばっちゃんも他人には優しいね。私やシオンが死んだら同じように悲しんでくれる？
アホん抜かすんでね。演技でもねすったなんと、しゃらあったく。
Having got the reaction she expected, Mion cackled. The two guests, unsure if they were supposed to laugh along, instead forced awkward smiles.
それでは本日は失礼いたします。では明日の夕方5時にお迎えに参りますんで、よろしくお願いいたします。ではごめんくださいませ。
After bowing their heads repeatedly, the guests left by the front door. Mion saw them off, waving her little hand goodbye.
帰ったよ。お役人もばっちゃんのご機嫌伺いに大変だね。不法なんか電話でいいと思うのにね。
Well, it was true that Orio Sonozaki was a central person for both her relatives and residents of Hinamizawa village as a whole. As a voting bloc, they numbered in the several thousands. It wasn't hard to imagine the mayor would try to pander to her. Unlike Mion, however, Orio was looking up longingly at the sky from the veranda.
どうしたの？猛録した？
What a fucking dick.
誰のお孫さんであろうと。気の毒だのう思ったんよ。
Saying that, she let out a deep sigh. Mion was let down, as normally her grandmother would have scolded her for her attitude.
みよ。俺、例の大臣の孫。さらわれてからどのくらいになる？
4日かな。
Orio let out another deep sigh.
旧敵の孫とはいえ、気の毒だな。
そう。
十分気はせいだろ。そろそろ終わりにしちゃれな。
The playful expression drained from Mion's face, leaving behind a stern one. And then, as if to ascertain Orio's will, looked into her eyes. Orio, expressing her intention with only those eyes, looked back into Mion's.
お茶が欲しいんで頼んでな。さっきのチョコレートも食べといね。
Mion gave a small nod and then turned around.
シミコさん、いますか？
Shimiko.
ばっちゃんに紅茶入れてあげてください。
From far away, a voice responded in the affirmative. Mion, after confirming she had been heard, picked up the phone and began dialing.
あ、もしもし？うん。うちのお父さん、います。
And with that, we are going to call it an episode. The next episode, we continue on like we do, man. I hope you enjoyed this one. I'll see you guys next time, man. Love y'all. Deuces.